Hello everybody, and welcome back to a brand new video. And in today's video, we'll be doing my first ever prediction for the 2024 Senate elections as of right now. Before we get into it though, please do go follow me on Instagram at RyanJakubowski_3. Again, I'll be posting, updates there and whatnot, and also it'd be very helpful if you guys would help me build up somewhat of a following over there. So again, go follow me on Instagram at that account. So with that out of the way, let's get into it here with our 2024 Senate map as of today. Again, a lot's going to change between now and November of next year, so it's very unlikely this will be the final map or my final prediction. But what I will say is that I think, as of right now, this is where the races stand, and I think this is where we're starting at. So, safe states, obviously, for the Democrats, going to be Washington, California, Hawaii, Virginia, because Tim Kaine is running for re-election. He won by 17 in 2018, with Biden on the ticket likely winning it by, at least 11 or 12. You'd expect Kaine to continue to outrun and win by big margins. New Jersey could be borderline likely, but Bob Menendez in a presidential year seems pretty safe, and I don't think Republicans are going to really try to do much to beat him out. New York, obviously, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Vermont, and not Maine, sorry, but Vermont, yes. Bernie Sanders might not run again because he's very old, but, no matter what happens, it'll be safe Democratic. So let's go to our safe Republican states. So the first is North Dakota. North Dakota was essentially competitive in 2018 because there was an incumbent Democratic Senator, Heidi Heitkamp, who lost by around 10. Losing by 10 as a Democrat in North Dakota is a pretty strong performance, although she was an incumbent, so you would expect there to be some level of ticket split there. Either way, it will not be within 10 this time. It'll be a, generic Republican blowout in the state of North Dakota. Wyoming, Nebraska, Utah, Missouri, which again was close in 2018, actually. It was, only but a 6-point race, but again, Claire McCaskill was the incumbent Democrat, and, now Missouri's gotten redder. It's again, having a presidential race at the top of the ticket in all these states makes partisanship more valuable. And I think now that, Missouri doesn't have a Democratic incumbent, it should be pretty safe for the Republicans. Mississippi, Tennessee, West Virginia, we'll talk about in a second, actually, but we'll keep that as safe. Indiana, and that will be it for our safe Republican states. So West Virginia is interesting because, again, as many of you know, there is an incumbent Democrat there, and that's Joe Manchin. So Manchin won by about 3 in 2018, which I think kind of signified that his reign over West Virginia is kind of coming to an end, and there's actually been rumors he might not even run for re-election, which I think at this point might be his best option because I think he has really no path to victory. But again, Trump's going to win West Virginia, or even DeSantis, but I think Trump will be the nominee. Either way, the Republicans are going to win the state by like 40 points at the presidential level, and yeah, Manchin will, if he does run for re-election, will outperform Biden by a lot, but will it be by like 40 points? No, it'll be by maybe 15 or 20, and he'll still lose by a landslide margin. Again, West Virginia is one of the reddest states in the country, and it's only getting redder, and Manchin's approval ratings are just not good right now. So, to me, he seems to be going down kind of the, Blanche Lincoln path, which is she was a Democrat who served in Arkansas, and she got blown out in her re-election bid. So let's talk about our likely Democratic states. The first is New Mexico, and this is borderline safe. You could put it as safe because Martin Heinrich is the incumbent Democrat. He's a very popular senator, and again, New Mexico does tend to like Democrats at the Senate level. So that being said, I think if DeSantis on the ticket, New Mexico could narrow up a fair bit, and that will likely drag Heinrich to below a 15-point margin to victory, and I think at this point in time, he'd be favored to win by just under 15. Next up would be Minnesota, I'm actually putting in the safe category. I kind of forgot Amy Klobuchar existed for a second. Either way, she won by, I think, 24 points in 2018, and she'd win by a bit less this time no matter what happens. But again, she's a popular incumbent, and I don't think she'll do 10 points worse. I think she'll maybe do 5 to 6 points worse. But Michigan, I think, starts out in the likely D category. And you might be thinking, well, hold on a minute. It might be lean. It might even be a toss-up without Debbie Stabenow running for re-election. But I hold a belief with Stabenow. It's that she is not that good of an incumbent, and I think her retiring was good for Democrats because she was getting old. She was, certainly someone who I think wasn't really that great of a performer because again, in 2018, she underperformed Whitmer by 5, and she, ran behind national partisanship by about 3 points. And that's actually worse than Gary Peters, who in 2020 ran only about 1.5 points behind national House partisanship. So when comparing it to like nationwide results, you could argue that Stabenow was the weaker of the Michigan Democratic Senate delegation. I think her retiring is, it makes things a bit complicated for the Democrats, but I think they have a really good bench. They could run a number of people. They could maybe, run Dana Nessel or Jocelyn Benson, who are the Attorney General and Secretary of State, who both won by Nessel won by 9 and Benson won by 14 points in last November. They could also run Alyssa Slotkin. They could run Andy Levin, although I think Levin has said he's not going to run. Hillary Schulten's a potential candidate. They're also looking at Debbie Dingell. And so I think, look, we're dealing with, I think, a lot of potential outcomes here on the Democratic side, but the Republicans don't really have a good bench. Maybe Peter Meyer, but again, I doubt he could get past a statewide primary because, again, he lost his own House primary in a more, ancestrally Republican district. Him winning statewide primary would be very difficult. Bill Huizenga is probably the best, potential, like, realistic nominee for Republicans, but again, he's, not, I don't think he's that, like, I think he's just average, and I don't think he'd be able to win a state like Michigan as a Republican. Republicans that won a Senate race here in like over 20 years, I don't think they're going to do it in 2024. I think Democrats start out as heavy favorites, and I think they win it by 5 or 6. Now, another Midwestern state we'll be looking at here is Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania, it's not really as complicated as Michigan is. In 2018, Bob Casey won by 13 points, and I think he'd win by a bit less this time. But the Republicans have like no realistic bench here, and if you look at their potential candidates, Doug Mastriano, who lost the governorship by 15 points. He's at the top of the list. That's just really bad. Kathy Barnett would also be a pretty bad candidate. She was very, very, conservative, and she had a lot of controversial statements, and the consensus is that she would have lost by more than Dr. Oz did because she ran the Senate primary last time. Stacey Garrity would be a decent candidate for Republicans. She is this treasurer. She's won statewide before, although she's relatively untested. Dave McCormick, I think, would be all right. But again, he would not, I really would not beat Bob Casey. Casey's been an institution in the state for a while, and he's someone who I think is very hard to unseat, even if Republicans run their best pick. So Pennsylvania, likely D. I think Casey wins by 8 or 9. Maine, not much to say here. Jared Golden should Angus King retire, Jared Golden might run, and he'd probably win by over 10. Angus King is also pretty popular, and I think he'd win, by 12 to 13 or something like that. It's just Maine's not really that interesting this year, and no matter what happens with Angus King, I think it'll stay blue. Now, let's move over to our likely Republican states. So the first here is going to be Florida, and Florida's interesting because there was a lot of talk about Democrats flipping back Florida even a year ago because they're like, oh, Rick Scott's not popular, and maybe Democrats can run a good candidate like Stephanie Murphy, right? And she might run, so potentially. However, since then, I think we've learned that Florida's just stubbornly red, and in November it reelected DeSantis by 19. So that doesn't bode well for Democrats in the future here. And yes, Democrats had atrocious turnout that would likely not be as bad in a presidential year. So I don't think that, Scott's going to be re-election by 19. But I do think that he wins re-election by a pretty substantial margin. I think he wins by a lot more than he won in 2018. So that's Florida, likely Republican. Now, the rest of these states, I think, are battlegrounds. I think that I could see them going either way. And that would leave the path for Democrats to win the Senate open, right? But to do that, they would need to win 5 of 6 of these seats, right? They would need to own, they need to win, in all likelihood, Nevada and Arizona, Wisconsin, and then 2 of Montana, Texas, and Ohio. And you can, debate how you think that those go for Democrats. But again, Republicans will have to win 2 of these. And I think that you can start out in Texas as a lead Republican state, because to me, that's the least interesting of these so far, although that could change. So in 2018, I know it was a 2-point race, and I, understand Ted Cruz is not the most popular of incumbents. That being said, I think that when you look at what happened in Texas this year, Democrats they made some inroads in the suburbs compared to last time, but they didn't do enough to make Texas look flippable, in the next 2 years. Maybe 2028, maybe 2032. But for now, I think Texas is going to stay red. I think Ted Cruz wins by less than Trump won by in 2020. And if Trump is on the ballot, he could be in some danger. But unless things go really wrong for Republicans in 2024, which is possible, but not the most likely outcome, I think Ted Cruz holds on by, 3.5, 4 points. Now, let's go over to our lean D states. So, Wisconsin, I think, is the first one I want to look at here just briefly. Tammy Baldwin won by 10 points in 2018. She's a very popular incumbent, and, she's someone who I think is going to be really hard for the Republicans to unseat. That being said, Wisconsin, did reelect Ron Johnson, and the Republicans are looking at Mike Gallagher to run against Baldwin, who would be a pretty strong candidate. Now, will he run? I don't think so right now. I'd say 40-60 he doesn't run, or 60-40 in favor of him not running, and that isn't good for Republicans because beyond Gallagher, they don't really have an amazing bench for someone who could really, viably take out Baldwin. But I think just because, Trump might carry Wisconsin to the presidential level, I think at that point I would be open to Baldwin potentially losing, although again, we'll have to see. And I think right now she's favored, but not by, a likely margin the way that, Bob Casey would be. So let's go over to Ohio now. It's another Rust Belt state that I think is going to flip here. So look, Sherrod Brown is a good incumbent. He's gonna, he's running for re-election. He's gonna make this one hell of a race. But at the end of the day, his 2018 performance is not really that impressive once you look at once you look beyond just a broad view of what happened here. So first of all, Sherrod Brown won by 7%, right, which is impressive for sure. But the Republicans, pulled out of Ohio in August. They didn't really try to beat him. In addition to that, this wasn't a blue wave year. So Brown ran about 2% behind national partisanship while having a, not really that much of a campaign against him. And so, sure, national partisanship could easily be D+4, D+5. And in that case, if Brown runs only 2% behind it, he'd win re-election. But again, Republicans would definitely try to beat him this time. They have a good list of candidates like Frank LaRose and Matt Dolan, and potentially, looking at running some other state senators and other figures. We can actually look at their list of candidates right now. Dolan would be pretty good. Davidson would be decent because he's, the representative from the 8th district. LaRose, who's the Secretary of State, who won by, I think 20 points or something. And so I think, when you look at all of that, that to me makes it seem like Brown's on his way out. He could win. There's a path for him, but this being also there being a presidential race where DeSantis or Trump would likely win Ohio decisively makes it very hard for Brown to win or to get enough of a ticket split, even if he would underperform or even if he would overperform Biden by a substantial amount. So let's go over to the state of Montana. This is another, I think, GOP flip here, right? It's just because of sheer partisanship. John Tester is a popular senator. He has a good approval rating right now. But the issue is Trump and DeSantis are planning to win Montana by 10 to 15 to maybe even 17 points in November 2024. And realistically, can we expect a big enough ticket split among Republicans in Montana to reelect Tester? Probably not. It's possible. He's done it before, but it's a really polarized country. And I think having, a Republican at the top of the ticket carry Montana by double digits, that would just be very hard for Tester to overcome. And so I think, look, in 2018, he won, but it wasn't really like this decisive victory that inspires confidence. He only won by around 3%. And so, sure, he has a path, and I think that he's, a fairly strong candidate. He is a strong candidate, but I just don't know if I see him winning re-election. Again, he needs a really big ticket split, and I think Republicans are just going to turn out at just too high of a level for Tester to win, although I do think it'll be fairly close. He will get, a big overperformance, but I just don't think it'll be enough. That's the bottom line. So Nevada is my next state here. I'm putting in the tilde column. I think that Nevada is going to be really close like it was this time. But here's the thing that I think we should understand about Nevada, right? In 2022, Catherin Cortez Masto won re-election by just under a point in an electorate that voted for Trump by between 3 and 5%. So that means that the voters that showed up on election day, that voted in that Senate election preferred Trump by 5% in 2020. And unless we get the fact that Democrats won that Senate race by a point, to me says that they're going to outperform again. And so unless Trump wins Nevada by 4 or 5 in 2024, I think it's really hard to make an argument for for Jackie Rosen going down. Because again, you can say she's not as good of an incumbent as Catherin Cortez Masto, but again, she won by more than Cortez Masto. She's a fairly popular senator, and in addition to that, like when you look at the results of Nevada and presidential races, they tend to be pretty uniform. They tend to vote for Democrats very narrowly, and I think Biden would, as of today, be narrowly favored to win Nevada at the presidential level. So right now, I think Jackie Rosen wins by 2 points or something like that. But again, Nevada is a weird state; it changes a lot, and I could change my opinion. But for now, I think she's pretty clearly favored to win re-election, even if it's by a slim margin. Now, the last state's Arizona. And Arizona is going to be really interesting because it's kind of a three-way race between likely Ruben Gallego for the Democrats, who's the representative from Phoenix, Kyrsten Sinema as an independent, and then for the Republicans, a laundry list of just, quite frankly, bad candidates. And so if you look at who's potentially running in the 2024 Senate race, it's really bad for Republicans, because if you look at who is expressing interest, Blake Masters, who lost by 5% and would be a really bad candidate, as well as Carrie Lake, who said that she's actually she should be out here in the publicly expressed interest column. And she, I think, would be the worst potential candidate they could run behind maybe Kelly Ward, who would just be disastrous. And so I think when you look at that and when you just see how just awful the Republican list of candidates is, I have to put it in the tilde column for now. Again, a lot could change. Kyrsten Sinema could potentially cause a vote split among Democrats and get a Republican elected with 45% of the vote. I get that. But right now, she's not polling well. She's unpopular with both parties. And I think Democrats, some of them might vote for Sinema, the moderates might. But Gallego still is pretty popular within the base. And I think he gets enough Democrats to vote for him, enough, scared moderates to vote for him to just barely beat out Carrie Lake or Blake Masters. Now, if Republicans run Mark Brnovich or, even someone like David Schweiker, they'd probably be favored in this race. But just because they have been so bad at selecting candidates and just because they've just, had such an awful state party organization for the past 4-6 years, I just don't see it. And I think that Arizona just narrowly votes for Ruben Gallego. So that's the map, and I did put it on a big map so we can get the totals. That puts Republicans at 52. So they do retake the majority, although, again, it'll be pretty underwhelming. I think they're not going to, win Nevada or Arizona. I don't think they're going to win Wisconsin. I don't think they're going to win Virginia or Pennsylvania, and that makes their majority a bit more slim. And so, look, the 2024 map is really hard for Democrats to win the Senate. They have to, hold on to Montana and Ohio in all likelihood, or win Texas, and that's just really difficult for them to do. It's possible. I wouldn't say it's outside the realm of possibility, but at this point, I think it's pretty clear Republicans are favored to win the Senate. So let me know what you think in the comments. Do you think Tester can win? Do you think Brown can win? Do you think Ted Cruz is going to win re-election? Do we think Nevada and Arizona are staying blue? What about Wisconsin? What about Pennsylvania? Tell me all about it in the comment section. And again, go follow me on Instagram. Go check out all my socials and links in the description. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.